Hello, welcome to our second lesson of biology. This one's on the immune system. If last lesson was very much about how diseases try to spread, how we do things to stop the spread of them, this is about what our body naturally does to stop us getting diseases and then how it responds when we do get them. So starting with our questions, first one, what are the two products of neutralization reactions? Thinking back to our last chemistry unit. 2. What is the animal vector that spreads malaria? Should be last lesson. 3. What causes the spread of communicable diseases? So that's the generic term, all those different ways that diseases can be spread. Collectively we call them what? 4. State the equation for velocity. 5. How are hormones carried around the body? And then finally, 6. Explain why diamonds have an extremely high melting point. So explain is the key word there. It tells you the sort of level of detail you might need to go into. Okay, our answers then. So neutralization reactions produce water and a salt. The salt is generally the thing you want. It's a soluble salt, so it dissolves in that water, so you can think how you might need to remove that. Mosquitoes are the vector for malaria. Pathogens is that collective term. Velocity is distance divided by time. Hormones move through the blood. And then diamonds have lots of strong covalent bonds. That's your description. Your explanation is so it requires lots of energy to overcome them, to break them down. Okay, so explain always requires a little bit more. Good. So looking at the immune system today then, there's a few parts to this that we need to be aware of. We need to be able to describe the immune system. We need to be able to explain how it functions. And then this last bit, vaccines prevent the spread of disease. We won't be doing that today. That'll be more next week, but we will speak just a little bit about vaccines today. Okay. So our immune system is made up of two parts, the first of which is a defense system. So when we think about immunity, we tend to think about the things going on inside our body, how we fight off diseases that we've already got. But our immune system actually starts with stopping those diseases, stopping those pathogens making their way in the first place. That's what we're all doing at the moment. It's why we're isolating. It's why we're physically distancing. It's to stop diseases getting in. And there are a few ways in which our body helps us with that. So we are going to have a little look at that in a minute. The defense system keeps pathogens out of the body, and it's made up of a fair few different processes. So if I cut across, I'm going to talk about this, I'm going to draw it out and speak to you about the different ways in which your body stops pathogens getting inside you. Then we'll meet back here to carry on with the lesson. Okay, so we'll look at the defense system in a little bit more detail. So if we draw ourselves a person, or the outline of a person, and we'll look at the different ways in which, that is a terrible person, the different ways in which our body stops pathogens from getting within us. So we'll add a couple of little details to our person so that we can talk about these different defense systems. So we'll add some eyes. We'll add a nose and some lungs. Only make it more terrifying. We'll add a stomach. Put cake in my stomach to make it clear that it is a stomach. It's more like a sandwich. We will add a cut that has healed like this. Good. into focus here. So we've got a few different defence systems to think about here, to talk about, and we'll go through them one by one. What a terrifying image that is there. So our first one, this is our biggest defence system, and it's one that we might not necessarily think about, might not be aware of, and it is our skin. Okay, so our skin provides a physical barrier to any pathogens getting in. So it's a physical barrier. We're not aware that this is doing such a good job of keeping pathogens out. We take it for granted. But if you get a cut or a burn or anything like that, it is a easy source of infection. It's why cuts often go a bit gammy after you get them, because pathogens are able to get in there, and it gets infected and it makes it worse. It is why burns are dangerous. A very severe burn, a whole body burn, is a big source of infection. It means lots of pathogens can get in, and that's often what kills you with severe burns. Not the burn itself, it's the we call it septic shock. It's all those pathogens getting in and overwhelming the immune system afterwards. And this is why our body seals these wounds as soon as they form. So scabs, okay, these are caused by blood clots. Okay, blood clots, and these form due to something called platelets in blood. So a nice high platelet count means that your blood clots nice and easily, and it means scabs form nice and easily. Your skin's a barrier. If that barrier gets broken, scabs form nice and quickly to stop any infections getting within it. Okay. It also stops you losing blood, another way of protecting you. These two systems here, they work nicely together. Your reason scabs get itchy is it's a way of your body getting rid of it. Once it's done with it, it's itchy to tell you that it's healed. You scratch it off and that blood clot's gone. It's also, when they get infected, they'll often get itchy as well, because it's telling you to reopen the wound so that it can heal again properly. What a lovely topic for conversation. I'm recording this on Saturday night. What an exciting Saturday night I'm having in this lockdown world. Okay, so our body does a really good job for the most part of stopping pathogens getting in, but we have a couple of weaknesses, a couple of weak points, and one of them here are our eyes. Okay, and our eyes are a source of potential infection, because they've got lots of the things that pathogens like. They're warm, they're moist, it's easy for pathogens to get in there and breed. So what do our eyes do when things get within them? They cry, they flush the eyes out. So tears are part of our defence system. Okay, they contain an enzyme which enzymes to break down bacteria, other pathogens. Okay, and they do a really good job of that. And that's why eyes shouldn't get infected too much, but they are, or generally speaking, eyes tend to get a little bit more infected than the rest of our body at work. They are a good source of infection for the reasons I just said, warm, etc. So then our other source is our respiratory system. Okay, so that's our nose, our lungs, things like that. We can breathe in pathogens very easily, and so our body has ways of protecting us against that. They are covered in mucus, is one, and thin hairs called cilia. And both these things trap pathogens. Okay, so your pathogens that get into your nose, get into your respiratory system, it should be that they get trapped by mucus, they get trapped by these hair-like things called cilia, and they don't get into your body. Again, it can only do so much. It's why we try, you should try not to be exposed to viruses, to bacteria like that, because your body can only do so much to fight it off. There's lots of talk about the coronavirus having, that the more you're exposed to it, the greater the chance of it taking hold is. That makes sense. Your defense systems can become overwhelmed. Okay, and then finally, it's this here, my stomach. Okay, our stomach contains hydrochloric acid, which does a great job of killing pathogens and bacteria. Anything, when you eat dodgy food, you eat food with bacteria on it, it should be that your stomach's able to kill most of that. And if you think of snot, you think of mucus, you tend to blow your nose to get rid of it, but the rest of it you end up swallowing even if you don't mean to, and that's another way of your body's defense system. It goes down into your hydrochloric acid in your stomach and it kills any of those pathogens within it. It's why it's a good idea to drink lots when you're around ill people, because any virus, any bacteria that gets into your respiratory system, into your digestive system, you're washing it down into your stomach and you're killing it. Okay. Your stomach's also, when you encounter pathogens, when it makes you, the reason you're sick when you're ill is it's your body trying to get rid of that toxin, to get rid of that pathogen. If you've ever had food poisoning, you'll know that it causes lots of vomiting. It's very unpleasant, and it's your body trying to get rid of that that toxicity, that pathogen. The same reason if you've ever been on a roundabout and spun around lots and lots and felt very dizzy and been sick afterwards, it's because our bodies interpret dizziness as poisoning, and so our body tries to get rid of that poison by throwing up, getting rid of it. Good, so that's the defense system in total there, all the different ways in which your body tries to get rid of pathogens or stop them getting in. We'll head back over to the slide. Good. So our body's defense system does a fantastic job of keeping us from getting ill. We are exposed to pathogens constantly, and actually most of the time we don't get ill. However, occasionally things do get into our body, pathogens do make their way in, they get around those different systems meant to protect us, and then we become ill. And when we become ill, it's our immune system that takes over and it protects us. So this is generally what you get asked questions on when they talk about the immune system. The defense system you need to be aware of, you need to know that it exists, you need to know that the body stops you getting ill, stops pathogens getting within, but it's the immune system where you need to know lots of the technical language here and make sure you're happy with these different systems. Okay, so it fights pathogens once they enter the body, and it's your white blood cells that do this. So you might have heard people talking about white blood cells on medical TV programs. It is your white blood cells that make up your entire immune system. They do this in 4 different ways. There's different parts of your white blood cells, different parts of your immune system, but it all comes down to white blood cells. And if you go to the doctor, go to the hospital and you're feeling ill, one way in which they can check to see whether you're suffering through an infection is to do a blood test and look for your white blood cells. These numbers go up when you've got an infection, whether that's a bacterial, virus, anything else, because your body's fighting something and so it produces more of these. In much the same way that a country might hire more soldiers when it's in a war, your body makes more white blood cells. Okay, so these 4 ways in which you counter pathogens are phagocytes, antibodies, antitoxins, and memory cells. So I'm going to talk you through each of those, and then I'll talk to you a little bit about how they work together to create your overall immunal response. Okay, so first one then, these phagocytes. These are flexible cells that allow them to engulf and digest pathogens. So once pathogens get inside your body, these phagocytes, they go around, they gather them up, they absorb them into themselves, and they destroy them. They literally hunt them down, find them, crush them, kill them, and that over time makes you better. Okay. When you talk about the effect of phagocytes, you're allowed to say engulf, you're allowed to say digest. What you're not allowed to say is they eat them. You can possibly get away with absorb, but it's not an eating process, but you can kind of think of it a little bit like that. They engulf them, digest them, and those pathogens are no longer there to make you ill. Okay. So when pathogens get into your body, the thing that actually makes them ill is something called an antigen, and each pathogen has its own unique antigen, and it's this that makes you ill. It's like a little spiky bit on the outside of your pathogen. You think of those pictures of the coronavirus going around, it's those blobby bits on the outside, and your body produces antibodies to counter these antigens. They lock onto them and they stop them producing those toxins. They stop them making you any iller. And then these antibodies pull that pathogen towards the phagocytes so that they can be engulfed. So these do 2 things. They stop the antigens making you sicker, and then they pull the entire pathogen into a phagocyte to be engulfed. And at the moment, all the fuss with the coronavirus testing, a test will see if you've got these antibodies. It will see whether you are currently fighting off the virus, and therefore it will let you know whether you've got coronavirus or not. This is what they're testing for, these antibodies. Okay. Next, your body produces something called antitoxins. When you've got a bacterial infection, that bacteria releases lots of toxins. It makes you sick, it makes you have a headache, whatever other symptoms you've got, and your body simply produces this antitoxin to neutralize it. It doesn't get rid of the infection, it just makes you feel better. It's your body soothing the symptoms. It's kind of like your natural equivalent of a paracetamol. It's not a cure, it's not treating it in any way, it's just relieving you of some of the symptoms. Okay? Then when we talk about immune system, you might think about immunity. It's certainly been talked about a lot with the coronavirus at the moment, about getting immunity, whether you're immune to something. And hopefully lots of you have had chickenpox before, because it should mean that you're immune to it. So going back and thinking about these antibodies and antigens, once your body produces these antibodies once, it knows how to fight that disease, and it knows how to win that fight. So what it does is it stores those antibodies away so that should that pathogen return, it is able to fight it again and win it again. So once it's successfully defeated a pathogen once, it will be able to do it well because it remembers the antibodies it needs in order to do that. And that's why we can only get chickenpox once. You get it once, you get ill, you get the spots everywhere, but your body stores the antibodies away, and when you come in contact with it later in life, your body fights it very effectively. And it does this through memory cells. They're specialist white blood cells that store antibodies and just keep them away for a rainy day, for when you get sick again. And it just allows you to produce antibodies mega quickly. There's no like learning curve for your body. It knows how to fight it, it defeats it. And this is why it's a good thing to get chickenpox early. Chickenpox can be quite nasty as you get older. When you're young and you're fit, you're able to fight it off very well, and then you've got immunity for life. It's why lots of people take their children to chickenpox parties and things like that to try and make sure they get that immunity early. This is also why we're not immune to things like the common cold, why the coronavirus is difficult to have immunity to, because it's specific to each pathogen. And when the coronavirus came along, which is a new pathogen, we don't have any built up immunity for it. And every cold you've ever had will be a slightly different pathogen, and that's why we're not immune to it. We don't have that built in because every cold is ever so slightly different, whereas every bout of chickenpox is exactly the same. And this system is how vaccinations work, which is what we'll look at next lesson. So I'll go over on to pen and paper again, and I'll just talk you through how these different systems work together to fight off an infection, because that's where you tend to get the bigger marks in this. Okay, how they work together. So again, we'll cross over to another version of me before meeting back here in a second. Good, so you'll have just heard me talking about the ways in which our body's immune system fights pathogens, and we'll just have a very quick look at how all that works together. So if we start by drawing myself a pathogen, which will make look nice and nasty like this. This is my pathogen, and then it has all these things floating around it like so. Okay, nice. Whether it's a virus, it's a bacteria, it's something like that. The important bit of these drawings, because viruses don't actually look like this, is this bit that I've drawn around the outside, and this is my antigen. Okay, antigens are the bits that make you ill. You can think of it as these antigens, they are spewing out toxins which make you ill. Okay, it's not quite as simple as that, but that's essentially what's happening. They release nasty toxins, those toxins make you ill. Your body, to fight those toxins, releases something called antitoxins, which we just looked at, which make you feel a bit better. They counter the effect of that, and that improves your symptoms, but it doesn't actually help fight the pathogen itself. What your body does to fight that pathogen is it produces something called antibodies, and these wrap around, fit perfectly onto those antigens. Okay, and that means that no more toxins can be released. So these are your antibodies. Okay, it takes your immune system a little while to produce these, and that's why the first few days after you get ill you can feel rough. There's a bit of a recovery time because it's your body learning how to fight it, learning how to produce those antibodies to wrap around the antigen and to protect you. But the reason you might have immunity to certain illnesses is that your memory cells store these for a rainy day. So then you've got a copy of all your different antibodies stored away somewhere, and when that pathogen comes back it can fight it off. And you'll have loads of different antibodies because you'll have been exposed to lots of different pathogens over your time, and they'll all fit just right for that particular pathogen and its antigens. And those antibodies do another thing. They drag your pathogens kicking and screaming towards a phagocyte, and a phagocyte's a nice flexible cell, a bit like this, which is able to this is your phagocyte, is able to wrap around your pathogen and it engulfs it. So it wraps around like this, and then what happens is your little pathogen is caught within your phagocyte. So it wraps around it entirely, looking like this, and your pathogen is stuck inside. It doesn't matter if it's producing about its antigens anymore. It doesn't matter if it's producing toxins, anything like that, because it's stuck inside your phagocyte, and then it engulfs it, destroying it. It doesn't eat it, but it digests it, it breaks it down, and it's no longer a problem. These also go around the body hunting for them. It does that before your body has an immune response. This is just like a generic soldier. Your antibodies are what means that you really get on top of the disease and squash it. Okay, it's how we get immune to things. Good, perfect. We'll head back to the slide for a final little exam question. Good, so hopefully you've just listened to me, watched me talk you through your immune response to a pathogen, and now finally we'll look at a little exam question together. So this is for 6 marks. It says when we are ill, we often undergo leukocytosis. This is where the body produces white blood cells to help fight the infection. This was what I was talking about earlier, when your white blood cells go up. You don't really need to know about it. It's just a way of the question getting to the important bit, which is explain how white blood cells defend the body against pathogens. Okay. So your exam question in today's assignment isn't exactly like this, but you get asked it in a slightly different way. This is the toughest form of this question, so I thought we'd go through it together. So our first point to say is what pathogens are and how they make you ill. So pathogens have antigens. These are unique, and that is what's responsible for making you ill. Questions like this are tough. They'll go right up to an A star because they're looking for the best students to include lots of technical language. If you just say pathogens make you ill, you'll limit yourself. Saying antigens means that you can go on to the next bit. So say, how does your body use those antigens and the fact that they're unique to help fight it off? Well, you produce antibodies. These lock onto the antigens and stop them from releasing toxins. So you've shown now that you know what an antigen is, you know how antibodies fight them, and you know that they work together to do that. They lock on and stop them releasing toxins, but that's not all they do. So they drag the pathogen towards a phagocyte, which engulfs the pathogen, destroying them. So you've said now 2 parts of how your white blood cells defend against pathogens. They produce antibodies, they produce phagocytes, and that stops the toxins and then it destroys them. Then show that you know the other stage, antitoxins, counter the toxins, and this reduces symptoms. This makes you feel better. So we've got four bullet points there, but we've got lots and lots of marks from doing that. We're showing lots of technical language, showing that we really understand what's going on. And then memory cells store antigens, protecting you should the pathogen return. We've shown that we know what immunity is, that we know that that you're unable to get that disease again in the future. That shouldn't be antigens, should it? Should be antibodies. Good. So for 6 marks there, it's only 5 points, but you've said so much in each one of those points that you'll make sure you get most of the marks. So within your assignment, there's a couple of questions talking about this process. It's about going through as many of these as possible. If all you say is white blood cells fight pathogens or fight infection, you limit the number of marks you get. The more technical language, the more you talk about exactly what's going on there, the more marks you'll get. Good. That's us done. Hope you're all well. Thanks very much for listening, watching. Bye-bye.